One day, 3 boys were holding Jin, beating him mercilessly and bullying him without restraint. Jin had completely surrendered to the beating, taking every punch without retaliating. Eventually, he decided to walk away. But then, one of the bullies insulted his mother, saying, "Go run to your mother and let her nurse you. You're just as useless as she is." Hearing those words, Jin was consumed with rage. He lunged at the boy, delivering a kick that knocked out his teeth. Then, he turned to the other bullies and easily took them down. He raised his hand to continue beating them, but his mother arrived at the scene and stopped him, saying, "Enough. I told you that strength exists to protect the weak, not to attack others, Jin." Jin tried to explain that they were the ones who started bullying him first, and that he was only defending himself, but his mother ignored his words and ordered him to return home with her immediately. When they entered the house, she began lecturing him about morals once again, saying, "My son, strength is a double-edged sword. It can either change your life for the better or for the worse. When I gave birth to you, I brought you to this secluded place to teach you the good side of your strength. But if you let anger control you like you did today, striking anyone who bullies you, you'll become nothing more than a villain. That is why, Jin, you lost today's fight." Jin looked at her in confusion and said, "But I beat them. How did I lose the fight? I don't understand." His mother replied, "You lost the battle against your anger. If you fail to control your rage in the future, all your training will be worthless. Now, get up, we're going to train outside." Jin was overjoyed when he realized they would actually train, so he followed her outside to begin. His mother started by teaching him that in order to control his strength, he first had to master his emotions during battle. She then showed him powerful and astonishing techniques, leaving Jin in awe. After the training session ended, she told him, "If you succeed in restraining your anger, you'll be able to control any fight, conceal your intentions, and defeat your opponents with ease." Then she demonstrated one of her legendary techniques on him, leaving Jin utterly amazed. They continued training, with Jin learning discipline and composure in his actions. Everything was going smoothly. By the end of the day, Jin and his mother returned home for dinner. However, as she was preparing the meal, they suddenly heard the voice of one of the fathers of the boys Jin had beaten. He was standing outside their house, shouting insults at them at the top of his lungs. Jin and his mother stepped outside to confront him. She asked the man what he wanted and why he was there. Furious, the man replied, "Your son beat my boy. I have to teach him a lesson right now to satisfy my anger." Jin was about to lose his temper, but his mother calmed him down, saying, "The man is right, Jin. You need to apologize to his son for what you did." "Apologize? You must be joking. I should break his arm so he never does it again. But the real blame isn't on him, it's on you. You raised him poorly." At that moment, Jin's anger exploded once more and he charged at the man. But the man grabbed a bottle, shattered it, and prepared to strike. Jin attacked with full force, but suddenly his mother delivered a single blow that sent the man crashing to the ground. She then looked at his son and told him to take his father and leave. Afterward, she and Jin returned inside. They sat together and she gently calmed him down, then said, "I saw the way you smiled earlier after hitting that old man. So, let me explain how I did it. All I did was use his own strike against him. I blocked it, and that caused him to fall by himself." She then added, "Now, let's get some sleep. Tomorrow your training resumes." Jin was delighted by his mother's words and agreed. But suddenly she jumped to her feet in alarm. She glanced at the curtains and what she saw made her freeze in place. It's a legendary beast, one that harbors extreme hostility toward the Kazuma family. It has come to kill them. Immediately, the mother rushed toward Jin, grabbing him tightly as she said, "You must stay inside the house and never leave, no matter what happens, and if anything happens to me, you must go to your grandfather and train there." Jin didn't fully understand what was happening, but he realized that a terrifying danger was threatening their home. She let go of Jin's hand and stepped outside to face the beast. Under the moonlight, it looked horrifying, assuming a battle stance ready to eliminate her. The fight began. The mother used all her strength and skill, but she couldn't keep up with the creature. It was overwhelmingly strong, striking her with brutal blows. Jin stood frozen behind the door, unable to move, listening to his mother's pained cries as the beast continued its relentless assault. Then, it grabbed her by the neck and began choking her, nearly ending her life. Jin couldn't bear it any longer. He dashed toward the beast at full speed and struck it. But the monster was too powerful. Jin's attacks had no effect, not even forcing it to release his mother. He kept attacking in rage, but the beast lost patience and struck him with such force that he was sent flying through the air. Then it tossed his mother to the ground and advanced toward Jin to finish him off. But the mother refused to give up. She rose again, using all her remaining strength to push the beast away from her son. The house crumbled under the sheer intensity of the battle. The mother collapsed to the ground, while the beast continued moving toward Jin, intent on killing him. Despite her injuries, she stood up for the third time. She refused to surrender and pointed her finger at the monster, saying, "Come at me." The beast, enraged by her defiance, charged at her with full force, ready to erase her completely. But the mother spotted a nearby pipe and an idea struck her. She moved swiftly, dodging the monster's attack, then caught it off guard with a sudden counterstrike. She grabbed its arm and restrained it in place. In her final moments, she thought of Jin and whispered, "Take care of yourself." Then she perished in the flames. When the battle ended, Jin rose from the wreckage, desperately searching for his mother, hoping to find her alive or at least uncover some trace of her. But there was nothing. It was then that he realized she was gone forever. He was overwhelmed with grief, but it was not just sorrow. It was the beginning of a new chapter in his life. A chapter of vengeance. Deep inside, he swore that he would never let his mother's killer live in peace. He would never forgive it. Ever. A week after the tragedy, Jin headed to Kazuma Corporation to meet his grandfather. The guard led him to the elevator and scoffed. "Kid, this is the third time you've come here demanding to see the boss. You keep bothering me, so I think it's time I punish you." But Jin responded firmly, "I will meet my grandfather Kazuma no matter how much you try to stop me, so take me to him immediately." Hearing the word grandfather, the guard hesitated for a moment before finally taking Jin to the top floor where his grandfather was waiting. However, the old man showed no recognition of Jin. Instead, he sneered and said, "What brings you here, you worthless brat?" Jin answered, his voice filled with pain. "A monster attacked me and my mother in the forest. It killed her right in front of my eyes, and I couldn't do anything to save her. But before she died, her final wish was for me to find you and ask for your training, so I came here to fulfill her last request." After hearing the story, the grandfather was impressed by Jin's determination. He said, "Very well, I will train you until you become strong enough to face that beast and avenge your mother. But your strength is pitiful. You must start learning how to fight immediately." Jin hesitated. "I'm not ready yet, and my mother told me never to start fights with anyone." Suddenly, the old man struck him without warning and said, "Well, the fight has started now. Show me what you've got." Realizing he had no choice, Jin accepted the challenge and immediately began fighting. The grandfather continued Jin's harsh training until he was completely exhausted and could no longer move. Then, the grandfather spoke sternly. "You must prove to me that you are worthy of carrying the Kazuma name and that you are capable of killing that ghoul in the end." Jin was filled with excitement and agreed to push forward. The next day, the grandfather officially began his training, taking him to the training arena where he would face his tests. He said, "Even I, when I was your age, was trained here by my own grandfather. Before I began my training, he had a skilled craftsman design those two pillars over there. I had to break one of them to complete my training, and of course I succeeded. Now it's your turn, Jin." Pointing at the pillars, he continued, "Today I will teach you everything you need to know so that one day you will be able to face the ghoul and defeat it." Jin felt an overwhelming surge of excitement and immediately started training. But his grandfather showed him no mercy. The intense training continued, with Jin enduring countless strikes from his grandfather. Once they finished the arena exercises, the grandfather took him to a training device and shattered it with a single blow. Then, he ordered Jin to try breaking it as well, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't do it. Their training continued day and night. Jin took blow after blow from his grandfather, growing stronger with each passing day. One day, the grandfather placed a stone in front of Jin and instructed him to break it. Jin, filled with determination, prepared himself and threw a powerful punch at the stone, but it didn't even crack. Then, the grandfather placed a pile of stones before him and, with a single strike of his fist, shattered them all in an instant. "This is just the beginning, boy. I want to see your full potential." The training continued for several weeks until one day, the grandfather invited Jin to dinner. They were supposed to meet an important guest who had information about the ghoul, along with a pendant said to reveal its location. Jin was incredibly excited. However, when the man arrived, he raised the agreed-upon price for the pendant. The grandfather then ordered Jin, "Take it from him by force." Jin hesitated at first, but in the end he followed the order. However, the man didn't surrender easily. He pulled out a knife, mocking Jin, thinking he was weak. But Jin didn't give him the chance. With a powerful strike, he knocked the knife from the man's hand and completely immobilized his arm. At that moment, the grandfather commanded him to finish the man off. Jin hesitated for a brief moment, but in the end, he followed the order and struck the man down. The grandfather then looked at him seriously and said, "Hesitating in critical moments will lead to your death. You must be decisive and never hesitate again, otherwise the consequences will be severe. If you continue clinging to mercy, you will never be able to defeat the ghoul." Jin then recalled everything he had been through in the past and realized the truth in his grandfather's words. From that day on, Jin trained with his grandfather relentlessly, never stopping for a single moment. His strength grew, his body changed, and he became more powerful and resilient. Finally, after 4 years, Jin challenged his grandfather to a final battle, which served as his ultimate test before completing his training. The grandfather accepted without hesitation, and both fighters unleashed their full power. At first, the grandfather completely dominated the fight, but suddenly a glimmer of light shone in Jin's eyes, and his legendary power awakened. He completely lost control and unleashed his ultimate technique. In a single moment, Jin overpowered his grandfather, officially completing his training. At last, the grandfather acknowledged Jin's strength and decided to host the Iron Fist tournament, a competition that would attract the strongest fighters from around the world due to its incredible prize. Naturally, the ghoul would be among those drawn to the tournament, as combat energy naturally attracted it. The entire event became centered around Jin, who had now become his grandfather's right-hand man. After completing his training, Jin stepped out of the arena and spotted a stone in front of him. He clenched his fist and struck it with full force, shattering it completely. His training was over. It was time for greatness. With his training complete and the Iron Fist tournament underway, Jin boarded a plane headed to the tournament's location. During the flight, he decided to search for his father online. But what he found was shocking. He discovered that his father and grandfather had fought in the previous Iron Fist tournament, and that battle had ended with his father's death at the hands of his grandfather. Jin struggled to process the revelation, feeling deeply unsettled. Upon arriving at his destination, he was greeted by the hostess who would escort him to the tournament site along with several other participants. He also reunited with his old friend, and they started chatting loudly. After that, everyone boarded the vehicle that would take them to the tournament grounds. During the ride, Jin held his phone, watching a video of the legendary battle between his grandfather and father. His friend got excited upon seeing the fight and said, "What an epic battle, but Hayato showed no mercy and killed that man so brutally." Of course, neither of them knew that the fighters in the video were actually Jin's father and grandfather. His friend then began telling him about the strength of the tournament's participants, including Paul Phoenix, the blonde-haired man sitting in the front seat, known for his legendary combat talent and overwhelming power. Finally, they arrived at the tournament site, a vast, abandoned arena. Jin immediately approached the hostess and asked where his grandfather was. She pointed to the top of the ring where the old man stood. Jin walked straight up to him and asked, "Will the ghoul really appear? And what did you do to lure it here?" His grandfather replied, "The ghoul is drawn to the strong combat energy in this place. As soon as the fights begin, it will appear within moments. Your task now is to win every match, so you'll be ready to face it." Jin agreed instantly, but his curiosity got the better of him, and he asked about the battle between his grandfather and father in the past. But his grandfather refused to answer, saying, "You're worrying about things you don't need to know right now." Then he walked away, leaving Jin behind. As Jin was leaving, a mysterious man suddenly appeared before him, blocking his path, and said, "Hayato ruined my life completely, and I must destroy everyone connected to him, including you. Jin didn't respond and tried to continue on his way, but the man suddenly struck him with a powerful blow, sending him backward. At that moment, Jin remembered his mother's words, managed to control his anger, and then said, "We'll settle this in the ring." He then walked away, cautiously watching the man, wary of any sneak attack. However, the man didn't move. Meanwhile, Hayato was observing everything from a distance. He then instructed the woman beside him to arrange a match between Jin and that man for the following day. She nodded in agreement. Later, as Jin was leaving the area, he spotted a girl among the tournament fighters. He approached her and asked if she had seen the previous battle between Hayato and his son, but she responded coldly, "This is something I cannot interfere with. If you keep getting involved in Kazuma family matters, you'll only bring harm upon yourself." Then she walked away. However, Paul Phoenix, who had overheard Jin's conversation, approached him and asked him to come along so they could talk. Jin was surprised by his words, but he agreed and asked him what he knew. Paul then began explaining what had happened. Hayato's son, Jin's father, had won the first round and knocked Hayato off the cliff. But Hayato didn't die. He got back up, crushed his son, and won the fight. Jin asked anxiously, "So, did he actually kill him, or do you not know for sure?" Phoenix replied, "I didn't see him kill him directly, but that's what everyone said." Then he added a warning, "Either way, don't get too involved in this matter. Focus on your training. Your match is tomorrow." Jin nodded in agreement, and they shook hands before parting ways. Without hesitation, Jin headed straight for his grandfather's assistant and asked to enter, but the assistant refused. However, Jin insisted and forced his way in. He marched toward his grandfather and asked him directly, "Did you kill my father or not?" The grandfather replied, "Yes, your father was a strong fighter, but he fell under the control of demons, so I had no choice but to kill him." Jin couldn't comprehend what his grandfather was saying and demanded, "Explain what you mean." The grandfather began to clarify, explaining that his father possessed the devil gene, which had completely taken over him. He told Jin that this gene is what attracts the ghoul to its host during battle. Then he added, "That is why the ghoul came and killed your mother." Jin struggled to understand and asked, "But how did the ghoul appear before me if I don't have this gene?" His grandfather answered, "You do have it. The proof is that you were fighting someone that day, which drew the ghoul to your location. That's what led to your mother's death." At that moment, Jin's memories started flooding back. He recalled that on that day he had fought off some bullies who were harassing him, right before the ghoul appeared. The grandfather continued, "I brought you here to fight the ghoul and lure it into this tournament. You must focus all your strength and stay conscious, otherwise you will die." Jin felt a surge of determination and responded firmly, "All right. Things are about to get intense, my friend." The next day, Jin was sitting, waiting for his match, when a girl named Zhao, a fighter his age with a kind demeanor, approached him and asked, "Why are you sitting here? Your opponent is already in the ring and getting ready to fight." Jin was startled by her words and immediately asked, "Who is my opponent?" She answered, "It's Smith." Jin's eyes widened in shock. Smith was the same person who had tried to attack him the previous day. Without wasting any time, Jin rushed down to the ring, where Smith was already waiting for him. The atmosphere was electrifying, and the crowd watched the battle eagerly, including Hayato. The referee announced the start of the match. The fight began at high speed, with Smith dominating the battle at first. Jin struggled to keep up as Smith took advantage of his inexperience and tried to end the fight quickly, just to enrage Hayato. But suddenly, Jin remembered what happened to his mother and rage ignited within him. He gathered all his strength, looked at Smith, and said, "Come at me." Then, he launched a furious barrage of attacks, delivering a powerful kick that sent Smith flying. But Smith refused to give up. He got back on his feet and charged at Jin once again. However, Jin activated his legendary blocking technique. In a flash, Jin unleashed a flurry of devastating punches, knocking Smith to the ground completely. Jin stood over him with a look of superiority and said, "Don't even try getting up again. You've lost." But Smith regained consciousness, remembered everything that had happened to him, and stood up again, trying to fight Jin once more, only to lose a second time. Yet he still refused to surrender and got back up a third time, determined to keep fighting. At that moment, Jin didn't know what to do with him, so he delivered a crushing blow to Smith's leg, breaking it and sending him collapsing to the ground, unable to move. Jin was about to continue his attack, but the referee stepped in and stopped the fight, announcing the result. Yes, Jin has won his first match and advanced to the second round. After the fight, his friends rushed into the ring to congratulate him, but Jin turned his back on them and walked away. He went to an isolated spot, sitting alone, feeling guilty for injuring Smith. Not long after, his friend followed him to comfort him, and he said to him, "What's wrong? Why do you look angry? Are you the one who lost the fight, or was it him?" Jin replied in a low voice, "I didn't want to break his leg, but he refused to surrender and kept attacking me. I had no choice but to stop him." His friend smiled and said, "The Mishima techniques you're learning are extremely dangerous. You need to control your anger, or you might end up hurting everyone around you one day. But don't worry, you did the right thing. Now, come on, let's watch Zhao's match. It's her turn." And indeed, after several matches, it was time for Zhao to face Nina. Zhao was overjoyed and full of energy. The fight started quickly, and while watching, Jin turned to his grandfather and asked, "How did you allow a high school girl to participate in such a brutal fight? And what kind of strength does she have to be able to keep up?" The grandfather replied, "You're in high school too, boy, but unlike you, Xiao uses her skills and her ability to read the battle to win. Just watch and you'll understand." Sure enough, Xiao skillfully evaded Nina's attacks, moving swiftly from place to place, while Nina failed to land a single hit on her. But suddenly, Nina unleashed her strongest technique, grabbing onto Zhao tightly, nearly choking her. The crowd watched anxiously, worried for Zhao, but Zhao didn't give up. Using every ounce of her strength, she spun rapidly and struck Nina with a lightning-fast move. Then, she leaped into the air, landed on Nina's shoulders, and slammed her to the ground with an incredible finishing move. Sweet dreams, Nina. And just like that, Zhao won her match. Jin watched in awe, deeply impressed by her fighting style. The atmosphere was electric. The match was nothing short of amazing. At the end of the day, Jin decided to go to Smith's room to talk to him, but he wasn't there. He searched for him for a long time until he finally found him. Jin approached him to check on him. Smith looked at him in surprise and said, "Strange, the guy who broke my leg is now coming to check on me. Did something break in your brain?" Jin replied, "You need to change your fighting style and find a new way to fight. That's all there is to it." Smith scoffed and laughed mockingly. "Of course, that's exactly the kind of thing someone like you would say. You're just a dog following orders from that old man Hayato, who brought you into this tournament and spent a fortune on you. No wonder you're talking like this." Jin tried to explain that Smith was wrong, but he refused to believe him. At that moment, Hayato appeared and said to Jin, "Get back to training. You have an important fight tomorrow." Then he turned to Smith and said mockingly, "When a dog loses, I shouldn't hear it barking anymore, or you already know what will happen to you." Smith was stunned by his words but remained silent. Jin, on the other hand, left without saying anything. After that, Hayato pulled Jin aside and spoke to him in a strict tone. "If you want to avenge your mother, you need to eliminate all your weaknesses. Never show them to anyone again." Then he started preparing for his next match, which would be against his friend Joe. The two fighters stood in the ring, and the referee announced the start of the battle. At first, Jin tried to remember his mother's words during the fight and did his best to control his anger, but soon he recalled what his grandfather had told him. "Every opponent you defeat brings you one step closer to defeating the ghoul." At that moment, his fighting spirit ignited and the battle between them grew intense. Even Hayato himself was thrilled by what he was seeing. He noticed that Jin was starting to unleash a strange energy, with a red aura beginning to rise from his body, giving him an incredible surge of power. And sure enough, Jin managed to defeat Joe. Joe lay on the ground, unable to stand. Hayato watched, expecting Jin to finish him off, but he didn't. Instead, Jin offered Joe his hand and helped him up, then said, "You lost, my friend. Let's go." At that moment, rage ignited in Hayato's heart. He had expected Jin to finish off his opponent completely. After the fight ended, Jin and his friends went outside the ring to take a break, and the day came to an end. Then, the highly anticipated match between Zhao and the Masked Tiger, also known as King, finally arrived. At the start of the fight, King dominated Xiao completely, landing a relentless series of attacks without mercy, making everyone worried and fearful for her. But suddenly, Xiao regained her focus and started to counterattack, landing several powerful strikes that she thought would secure her victory. However, King swiftly rose to his feet, launched a powerful strike, then grabbed Xiao, spun her around, and delivered a devastating finishing blow to her head. Yes. King defeats Xiao and advances to the semifinals. His next match was against Phoenix, but Jin didn't care about anything except his friend's safety. He immediately carried Xiao to the hospital and stayed by her side until she regained consciousness. When Xiao woke up, she thought Jin would scold her and lecture her about being a girl, telling her that fighting wasn't for her. But to her surprise, he smiled and said, "Well done, you're an incredibly strong fighter and I admire your skills." She looked at him in shock and asked, "You're not going to mock me just because I'm a girl?" Jin replied, "On the contrary, the strongest person who ever taught me how to fight was my mother, and I have yet to see anyone stronger than her." At that moment, Zhao realized that Jin carried a deep sorrow over losing his mother. She tried to comfort him. Meanwhile, outside the room, King stood silently at the door, as if he had come to check on Zhao, but he accidentally pressed the door button, causing it to open, though neither Jin nor Zhao noticed his presence. The next day, it was time for the match between King and Phoenix, one of the tournament's top-ranked fighters and a favorite to win. The fight began and both fighters were at their peak intensity. Phoenix was brutally strong, unleashing a barrage of relentless attacks on King, not giving him a moment to breathe. But King was no ordinary opponent. He managed to catch Phoenix with one hand, then lifted him high into the air before delivering a lightning-fast finishing blow. Everyone was stunned by King's overwhelming strength. Then, Hayato revealed a shocking truth to Jin. That's not the real King. The ghoul killed the real King a month ago. This man is an imposter, here to win the tournament in his place. And indeed, the fake King defeated Phoenix, setting up the final showdown. King vs. Jin. That night, Hayato spoke with one of his soldiers about the ghoul, asking if there were any signs of its appearance yet. The soldier replied, "Nothing so far, but it seems that Jin will have to keep fighting in the ring for longer, otherwise the ghoul won't show up." As Hayato walked away, a mysterious girl suddenly emerged from the shadows and attempted to attack him. She was desperate to kill him, screaming and demanding that he return the pendant he had stolen from her. But Hayato didn't care about her words. He swiftly struck her down, sending her crashing to the ground. He was about to finish her off, but Jin appeared at the last second and blocked his path, saying, "Leave her to me. I'll handle this myself." Hayato was unwilling to back down. He still wanted to strike her again, but Jin stopped him. Hayato sighed and said, "As you wish." Then he walked away. After Hayato left, Jin helped the girl up and asked why she had attacked. She glared at him and said angrily, "Don't pretend to be innocent. I heard you call him your grandfather just now. That means you're from the Kazuma family, the despicable clan that stole my mother's pendant and never returned it." Jin responded, "We didn't steal anything, we obtained it from someone after paying for it." But the girl insisted that the person had stolen it from her mother. There was a brief silence, then Jin said, "I need that pendant for the ghoul. He's the one who killed my mother and I have to avenge her. I promise you, once the fight is over, I'll return it to you." The girl stared at him and said, "You don't know the truth. Do you realize that your grandfather was the one who released the ghoul in the past? He's not as noble as you think. If you're looking for revenge, then you need to find out who is truly responsible for your mother's death." Jin stood frozen in shock at her words, realizing that his grandfather had a hand in everything that had happened. But in the end, he said to her, "After the fight, I'll return the pendant to you. But right now, nothing is more important than my revenge." He then turned to leave. Before he could walk away, the girl spoke again. "You want to know who King is, don't you? King was just an orphan who grew up in an orphanage and joined the tournament so he could build and care for the place that raised him. You can do whatever you want with that information, but I just wanted to tell you." Right after that, the fight between Jin and the masked tiger began. The tiger launched a ferocious assault, not giving Jin a single chance to counter. He struck him over and over again, while Jin remained passive, lost in thought about what the girl had told him the night before. Meanwhile, Hayato kept glancing at the pendant, anxiously waiting for the ghoul to appear. His tension was at its peak. At that moment, the tiger was completely in control of the fight. He trapped Jin, ready to finish him off, and the outcome seemed inevitable. But suddenly, Jin regained his full strength, remembering his duty to avenge his mother. His determination ignited, activating all his abilities. He lunged at the tiger, not giving him any chance to counter. His eyes glowed red and his power increased dramatically. He unleashed relentless attacks, overwhelming his opponent, until he finally defeated him. Afterward, Jin walked up to the fallen tiger and said, "The entire tournament prize is yours. I won't take a single coin. Do with it as you wish." What a noble act! He had done more than enough. But just as Jin was about to leave the ring, he was startled to see his grandfather standing before him. With a firm voice, his grandfather declared, "Stay where you are. You won't claim the tournament title until you defeat your final opponent." "Yes, I am that opponent, and you're not leaving until you win against me," Jin replied. "Fine, but I have one question. Was it you who released the ghoul into this world?" His grandfather answered confidently, "Yes, I did. Now, show me what you've got." Jin's face twisted with rage as he charged forward, launching into battle. At first, Hayato dominated the fight, using his superior physical strength to prevent Jin from finding any openings. But eventually, Jin adapted, evading the attacks and awakening his hidden power. Suddenly, Hayato collapses to the ground from the sheer force of the blows, but he quickly rises again and delivers a powerful strike to Jin, sending him crashing into the wall. He then says, "If the ghoul doesn't appear, I'll kill you before it even arrives." At that moment, Jin remembered everything: his past, his mother's words, and his fury exploded. He realized that his grandfather was the true reason behind his mother's death, and with that revelation, he launched a crushing attack, followed by an unstoppable series of blows, leaving Hayato with no chance to counter. His eyes burned red and sparks of energy crackled around him. His grandfather fell to the ground and the pendant slipped from his grasp, but suddenly it glowed with a brilliant green light. The sky turned green, signaling the ghoul's long-awaited arrival. It descended from above in a terrifying manner, its presence sending chills through the air. Upon seeing it, memories of his mother's brutal murder flooded Jin's mind, and his rage surged to its peak. Without hesitation, he rushed toward the ghoul with relentless fury. The moment of revenge had finally come. Meanwhile, all of Jin's friends were extremely tense, unable to comprehend how he would fight the ghoul after 3 exhausting rounds without even resting for an hour, especially since his body was still injured. But the grandfather stops them, saying, "This is Jin's fight. No one interferes." And so, Jin charged at the ghoul, landing blow after blow mercilessly, knocking it to the ground with full force. But the ghoul wasn't an easy opponent. It retaliated with fierce attacks, trying to break Jin, landing several powerful strikes and throwing him to the ground. Then, it grabbed him by the leg and hurled him violently. Everyone wanted to intervene, but Hayato stopped them, watching quietly as if he didn't care about his grandson's fate, almost as if he wished for his death. But he rose again, burning with determination, and launched a ferocious assault, striking the ghoul over and over without pause, as if he knew no mercy. Everyone watched in shock at his overwhelming power. At last, the ghoul could no longer endure and collapsed to the ground, defeated. Yes, Jin had won, but suddenly, the sky lit up green once again, and an immense energy struck the ghoul, completely destroying the arena, sending everyone crashing down below. They lay on the ground, unable to move, staring upward in disbelief. The ghoul had evolved to another level, its power surging to insane levels, becoming, quite literally, unstoppable. Hayato watched with a smile, as if he had been waiting for this moment, while the ghoul locked eyes on Jin and immediately lunged at him. Jin fought with everything he had, but this was his 4th battle. His body could no longer endure. He collapsed to the ground, exhausted. His friends saw him fall and rushed to defend him, attacking the ghoul in an attempt to stop it. But they simply weren't strong enough to match it. In the background, Jin lay on the ground, watching them fight for him, struggling with everything they had despite their weakness. He saw Xiao being choked, barely clinging to life, and suddenly, the memory of his mother's death flashed in his mind. Everything that had happened to him came rushing back in a single moment, and he realized he was about to lose again because of his own weakness. With every last ounce of strength, he forced his body to rise, his eyes flickering with red sparks, and at that moment, the dormant demonic gene within him finally awakened. He shot toward the ghoul like lightning, delivering a devastating kick that sent it flying. Then, in the blink of an eye, he appeared behind it and landed 2 lightning-fast strikes. In rage, the ghoul flew upward, then came crashing down, delivering a crushing blow to Jin's stomach, sending him hurtling away. Everyone was stunned, anxiously waiting for what would happen next. And then, suddenly, Jin charged at the ghoul with all his might, showing no mercy. Strike after strike, relentless, until the ghoul lost the ability to see from the sheer force of the attacks. Jin didn't back down for even a second. He grabbed the ghoul by its chin and delivered the final decisive blow. At last, the ghoul collapsed, its dark aura vanished, the sky returned to normal. The place was filled with joy. Everyone was celebrating Jin's victory. But suddenly, Hayato stepped forward and coldly said, "I will kill you." Everyone looked at him in shock as he continued, "The demonic gene inside you is dangerous. You must die." They all tried to convince him that Jin was fine, but he wouldn't listen. He pulled out his gun and fired. Jin collapsed to the ground, his body completely unable to move. In his final moments, he saw an image of his mother before him. He couldn't believe his eyes. A wave of happiness washed over him. He just wanted to reach her, to embrace her, but his body wouldn't move. But at that moment, the demonic gene fully activated for the first time. Jin transformed into a terrifying monster. He grabbed Hayato and crushed him mercilessly. Hayato hadn't even processed what was happening yet, but he didn't get the chance. Jin lunged at him again and completely annihilated him. Everyone watched in shock, unable to comprehend what was unfolding before them. Even Hayato, who had always been in control, was now powerless, torn apart in Jin's grasp. His life seemed to be ending in that very moment, but suddenly, Jin stopped attacking. He looked at them all with an eerie gaze, then turned around and walked away. The entire place fell into absolute silence. No one understood what had just happened. And I know, my friend, that you're feeling just as confused about this ending. Maybe it's a weird ending, but this is the story of the game. I tried to adapt it as best as I could, and this is the result. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and hey, take care, peace out.